Welcome to the Portland Culinary Podcast on Portland Culinary Radio. I'm Stephen Shanley, your host. Joining me is a special guest someone I've been a fan of for more than a year now, just about, Suzanne Henricksen, no D, Henricksen. Did I get that right?
That's right.
Founder of the Crafty Cask, K-A-S-K.
C-A-S-K.
I mean, C-A-S-K, what the heck? See, I told you I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer. So, this really could be an episode of the Portland Beer Podcast. But we're going with the Portland Culinary Podcast, but it also could be a podcast I don't have yet, the Go Live Life You Imagine podcast. I do teach people to do that, but you've done that. You do spirits, you cover cider, you cover beer, you cover some wine, all of it. Okay, for those that don't know, what is the Crafty Cask?
The Crafty Cask is a business that's all about celebrating craft alcohol producers at its core. So we want people to know the stories behind these amazing craft beer, craft wine, craft cider producers and connect with them as people, right? And really learn their stories and then want to go try their drinks and engage with them. And so we're really all about celebrating their stories. And then on top of it, we're about busting myths with consumers. So consumers who think that they hate gin or maybe they hate IPAs, we're there to talk about the whole spectrum of those things so that they can find the IPA that's perfect for their palate or the gin that's perfect for them. So it's kind of those twofold pieces, is educating and celebrating.
And, some of it sounds like people listening go, that sounds like what Stephen does. And some of it is what I do. But I've become a huge fan of you since I met you. And then I've kind of watched your brand grow even before it was just, I don't even really existed when we met. And I'm so impressed with if people like any kind of little bit I do, they're going to absolutely love what you do. So it's been a lot of fun. So I met you April last year, short at World Food Travel Association's conference of Food Trekking World.
Yep.
And we talked and you visited, I've done a couple things, which we'll get into, but I'm thinking about going for it, and I'm like, you can do it.
Yeah.
And you went for it. So shortly after you launched the Crafty Cask, and then October of last year you left your job, big corporate job.
Yeah.
That's hats off to you. And I watch your videos on Facebook and I get jealous. Like, I want to do cool videos like that. And your content's amazing and interesting. And even some of the topics that I think I know, like you did a video recently about you think you don't like IPAs.
Yeah.
And it's like, hey, I got my own shtick about IPAs. People not like them. And I go, and hers is fantastic. So really fun to have you here in Portland and get to tell your story and introduce you to my fans and hopefully help you get where you want to go. I love helping people succeed, cheering people on. I think it's one of my core values, cheer others on.
Yeah,
okay.
Well, and I'm excited to be here because you were an inspiration to me last April when we met as well. So seeing what you've done and seeing how you built it and where you started from and where you are now, it was really inspirational. And those are the types of stories that help people make the leap, right, and go after their dreams.
Yep. Okay, so ask some of the questions that I always ask on every podcast. So where were you born?
I was born in Springfield, Massachusetts.
Okay, and where'd you go to high school?
I went to high school at Chicopee Comprehensive High School, Chicopee Comp as we called it.
Chicopee?
Chicopee, C-H-I-C-O-P-E-E. Oh, are there two P's? I don't even know now.
Chicopee.
Yes.
That's funny. Okay, and what was the mascot at Chicopee Comp?
The Colts.
The Colts. Okay, just a few of those across North America.
Yeah, just a couple.
Okay, and what happened after high school?
After high school, I went to a small state school in Massachusetts and studied economics and minored in math and Spanish and just kind of thought, I was, you're young, you're 18 years old. And I was like, business sounds like the right thing to do. So I studied economics. And then while I was in college, I studied abroad in San Sebastian, Spain, which
nice.
Was amazing and beautiful for anyone who hasn't been. It's a place, especially if you love alcohol, I think more bars per square foot or per person out of Europe, at least when I was there at the time. So it's an amazing place. But yeah, that really was a pretty transformational experience for me because San Sebastian is in the Basque Country and they have an incredible culinary and cider culture there. And I really got involved in that. And I got to go to a traditional cideria and really got to kind of learn all about that. And I just fell in love with learning about people and culture through their food and through their alcohol, and gained a little bit too much weight while I was there to boot because of that. But it was amazing. Yeah. So that was a big piece of my college kind of education, was living in Spain for 6 months.
So looking back, was that partially a life-changing journey?
I think it was because before I went to Spain, I was a Massachusetts girl, and I was a hometown girl, and I always thought I was going to live there forever and never leave. And I remember coming back from Spain and telling my parents, like, so I think I'm going to go move to California. And they were just like, what? Huh? And I came back because I felt like I'd now seen more of Europe than I had seen of my own country, and that felt weird to me, and I felt like I needed to get out and explore, and I kind of got that traveler bug when I was over there and realized how much there was to see and learn of the world. And I don't know if, I mean, there's nothing wrong with still living in your hometown, but I might still live in Massachusetts and have a very different life if I didn't go to Spain. So I absolutely think it was probably one of the most transformational moments in my life so far.
Yeah, I lived in Minnesota for 3 years. There's people that have never left the state, and they go to University of Minnesota, become a Golden Gopher, and that's it. They just stay their whole life in the state, or their whole life in St. Cloud, which is even a little scary, actually, as much as St. Cloud is nice. But
and it's great. I mean, sometimes I envy that a little bit because it's a very nice life, and it'd be nice to still be right next door to people that I went to fourth grade with and everything, and it's fun when I go back to visit with them, but it just wasn't my path. Yeah.
Okay, so you said you got in a car and you drove across the country. Now, where again did you drive to?
I drove to San Diego. Yeah, so when I got home from Spain, I said I'm moving to California, and I jumped in the car, camped my way across the country, and landed in San Diego without a job, without an apartment, because you're 22 or 21, however old I was at the time, and that seems like a brilliant idea when you're that age. And and so I lived in San Diego for about 3 years.
Wow. Okay, you just showed up and made it happen.
Made it happen.
Okay, and then what happened? What happened after? You go to somewhere else for school, or?
Yeah. So I was in San Diego for 3 years, got the kind of obligatory job to pay the bills type thing, but knew that wasn't my path and calling, but still wasn't quite sure what my path and calling was. What I did know is that I loved to travel and explore the world through food and drink. And so when I decided to go back to school to start to figure out, like, really, when I grow up, who do I want to be? I decided to not only get my MBA, but go to a school that focused in international MBAs and actually, had a population with more international students there than domestic students there. So I went to Thunderbird out in Arizona to really set myself up for, I'm not sure what I want to do, but I know travel's probably going to be a pretty big part of my life, and understanding the world from that lens seemed like a good idea.
And it never hurts to have an MBA.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then when you were done, of course, you went right back to San Diego.
No, I did not.
Oh.
I
grew up in Southern California. Where you left Southern California? Where did you go?
I love San Diego, especially in my early 20s. It was amazing to be down in Pacific Beach. But I am a type A East Coaster through and through, and it was a little too slow for me.
A little too laid back.
I honestly, everyone talks about the weather there, and I felt pressure of it's so sunny and nice every day. There's so much pressure to go outside and have fun every day. I just want to watch a movie,
You probably reveled in the rain.
Yeah, exactly. I missed the weather. I missed it, So while I was in business school, I actually interned up at a winery in Napa because I thought I wanted to get into the wine business, and that was going to maybe be my foray into kind of the traveling and, my passion area. And so I interned at a winery and got to know the Bay Area really well while I was up here, and just totally fell in love with the Bay Area. It really felt like the closest thing I could get to Boston out on the West Coast, where they work hard, play hard, and there's a lot of culture and a lot of different things, and very walkable city. And so I really fell in love with San Francisco, and decided to set my sights on kind of getting up to San Francisco after I graduated.
So you went and worked for a major Fortune 500 company there, marketing, market research.
Yeah. I worked for the Clark's company up in Oakland, and I worked there for 11 years, and I kind of fell into it. I knew after my internship in wine country that I needed to go hone my marketing chops elsewhere first. I needed to go to a really good marketing training ground to take all of that theory I had learned in business school and really turn it into practice before I could kind of jump into the wine industry. And Clorox kind of fell on my radar because a friend of mine who graduated a year before me, she started working there. And so she came back and recruited and told me she thought I would love it and convinced me that market research was amazing. And she was right. And I'd never even taken the market research class at Thunderbird, which was funny. So it wasn't necessarily my original path, but I fell into Clorox, and lucky for me, and this is hard with corporate, I think, their corporate culture matched who I was exactly. So I didn't have to change anything about me. So it was very easy for me to just be happy there and be successful. And it's really great people. And so, I stayed put no one in our generation really works somewhere for 11 years anymore. And I'm shocked that I did, but it was a great run, and I did the Fortune 500 thing for a while.
Okay, and then spring of 2007, this is 18 this year, I sometimes lose track of my years now that I'm old, but 17 you launched Crafty Cask.
I did.
And then you left, as we said, your job in October. Big leaps.
Yeah.
What did that feel like when you're like, hey, I'm self-employed?
Terrifying, exciting, like all the emotions. It was amazing. It's been a dream of mine for a really long time. While it sounds like, I came up with this idea in early 2017 and then left in October of 2017, it's never that simple. I had been really playing with ideas and websites and social media and, learning in this space, in the travel, food, alcohol space for probably about 7 years, actually, with 2 different websites that I've had over the time.
So look, picking up the curtain and going behind the scenes a little bit.
Yeah.
So Crafty Cask was the 3rd website that you were managing and promoting.
That's right.
You had a travel website.
Yep.
You had one that focused more on breweries and
Yep.
wineries. So those are 2 different things. Again, though, you had social media platforms for those. So I bet a lot of what you learned there, okay, this fits me, this fits what I'm trying to do, that probably all informed.
Yeah.
Your journey kind of prepared you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I was always, while I loved my day job and I was always very excited to be there, there was just this itch and this I want the fire in my belly, right? And I knew what I was passionate about, and I wanted to figure out a way to bring that to life. And so for, like I said, about 7 of those 11 years, I was always just kind of nights and weekends playing on the side, trying to figure out what's the right way to bring that fire in my belly to life and bring my passions more holistically as part of my life. And so I finally had a pivot, as all the startup people say. I had a pivot that came to me as an aha in the shower, one of those cliche moments that actually happened to me, and I couldn't believe it did, in early 2017. Yeah, and once I started really exploring that idea and that version of the idea and playing with it, it all of a sudden kind of just clicked. And after a long kind of bucket list vacation that I took where I had a lot of time to think and really focus, I came home from that vacation and was like, I think I'm leaving. I think I'm going to do this. It kind of feels like now or never. And while I could keep playing with this at night and on the weekend and really just be playing with it, I feel like if I put 100% of myself behind it for a little while, I might actually be able to really turn it into something for real. And that seemed like too big of an opportunity to pass up.
That's awesome. And so Crafty Cask, as its current iteration, it may tinker slightly over the next 5-10 years.
Absolutely.
But currently you tell stories of lots of different craft alcohol makers.
Yep.
And then you help them tell their stories, kind of 2 different things. So you cover, let's see if I got this right, beer, spirits, cider, sake, a little bit of wine. And I love it that 2 things. You tell stories, and then what do you bust myths. Yes,
I bust myths. That's one of my favorite parts of my job right now is, I love when people come up to me and they're like, no, I hate gin. And I'm always just like, wait a minute. Do you think gin tastes like a Christmas tree? And 80% of the time, it's like, well, yeah, that's what, okay, we have to talk a little bit. We have to understand that there's a whole spectrum of gin with very different botanicals and very different levels of juniper. And so I love doing that. And I do events where I bring craft producers together a lot of times and bring consumers together. And it's nice for the craft producers because they get to introduce their wares and their products to consumers, but they also help me with that education piece of it, and they really teach them about what they're passionate about, whether it's gin or cider or whatever the case may be. And so that's a super fun part of my job.
Yeah, gin is one of my boundary drinks. I only drink before noon. I only have gin, so I try to.
Breakfast gin.
Sometimes,
gin.
Yeah, sometimes I have to. I've recently been drinking a lot of coffee rum, so that's okay. And I was at Rolling River Distillery recently, and they have it's like a coffee vodka, but it's a coffee spirit. And oh my gosh, I don't even need coffee in that. I just can have that. So I make some exceptions for my gin.
Yeah.
Okay, but you're here in Portland, San Francisco's home, although I've seen your awesome videos on Facebook all over the country. What did I follow your journey? You were, in Connecticut recently, and there was a big storm. And
I got stuck there for a while.
I'm a fan. Yeah. I follow the journey. But you do this great job. So you go all over the country telling these really wonderful stories of people making, craft stuff all over the country. But San Francisco's home. Why are you here in Portland?
Well, what brought me to Portland originally, so I'm here for next week. There is the American Distilling Institute has their Craft Spirits Conference here in Portland, and it's looks like an amazing setup, and so I'm excited about that. And then I decided to tack on an extra week and come a week early because you guys have an amazing reputation for craft alcohol out here. I mean, we do too in San Francisco, but it's there's a lot to explore and a lot to learn, so I decided I needed a week to kind of go meet some brewers and distillers and cider makers and really kind of explore and see what you guys are doing out here and find some hidden gems that I can tell the world about.
Fantastic. Okay. So yeah, if you find a hidden gem I don't know about, I will definitely be impressed and grumpy at the same time.
I will too. Yes, I'll be very impressed if I find something you don't know about.
But whether I know about it or not, what I'm excited about is you're gonna meet with people, you're gonna make videos, you're gonna tell stories, you're gonna get content, you're gonna go home and eventually produce those videos, edit them, and then you're gonna put it on your website, and I'll be able to share it with the world. And I'll keep adding links to this episode on the Portland Culinary Podcast website. Like, here's another one, and here's another one, so people can, because you'll be telling stories about people I love.
Yeah.
And that's the exciting thing is, I want to go here and I want to there, I want to there. I mean, because the list of people I love in Portland is like very, very, very long.
Yep.
And so that's the fun thing. And here's what I know. You'll get a different angle and a different story of them than I would, or Ezra Johnson Greeno is a prominent beer writer in Portland. If you're meeting with the brewer, you'll get a different story than either one of us.
Yeah.
Because you have your approach to the world. And I find it captivating, which is one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the podcast. Another one is I get lots and lots of people who like, well, how can I do what you do? How can I go from, not having a background and build a brand and be self-employed? And, I'll just say, well, just go listen to this podcast and you'll hear how Suzanne is doing it right now. And then they can follow you and follow your journey, because I think it's just fantastic.
Yeah, I think it's important. We only get one shot at this life, right? So it's important to figure out how to make it the best version possible. And for me, that's doing something like this.
Okay, so horrible question. People ask me, what's your favorite food cart? And I hate them for it. So I'll turn the tables on you. So wine, whiskey, beer, what's your favorite?
Yes to all of them. I mean,
good answer.
Yeah. How do you pick a favorite? No, I mean, it depends on the day. It depends on my mood. But so far, there is no alcohol that I've met that I don't like. So.
Well, and I think that's an important distinction to draw out, is that I do know a lot of beer geeks, and some of them are very nice. Mm-hmm. There's a little bit of a smack there, and some of them are very nice. But some of them just like beer. They just like beer. I ran into a community of people who only drink sherry. Wow, my mind was blown. And they love sherry. There's some wine people who don't. They only like wine. There's some spirit people, whiskey or nothing. Whereas you really authentically, I mean, when I watch your videos, I can see you like all of those things sincerely and for real. So some people say, well, how can she do gin and how can she do IPAs? I don't know. I watched your video on what gin is and why so much like IPA, and they both work for me. So
yeah, I mean, I'm passionate about them, and I think passion gets you very far. And I'm, my background at Clorox was market research, right? And so when I'm passionate about something, I dive in deep and I learn a lot about it, and I find cool people who know way more than I do and can tell me cool things, and then I share that with the world. Yeah.
Okay, so you said being self-employed early in the podcast was exciting and terrifying.
Yeah.
What's it like to work from home?
It's challenging. It takes some getting used to. The biggest thing I probably miss about corporate America is having someone in the office next door to me that I can pop my head in and brainstorm with and just kind of throw ideas around with and stuff like that. And so you have to start to build that infrastructure, and you have to also get out of your home, right? Like working from home, it can turn into all of a sudden I haven't left my house in 4 days, and that's a dangerous place to be.
Yes, exactly.
So you have to really start to think about working from coffee shops and finding other people and going to lots of networking events and make a much bigger effort to do that stuff than maybe you do when you are surrounded by people at a corporate job.
Yeah, true confession time. I sometimes tell people a joke and I think it's hilarious. Oh, I'll do my hair for you. What I really mean is I've spent the past 2 days in my sweats working at my desk, seriously. And I'm actually going to take a shower before I head out.
Yeah, which is also awesome though, right? It's awesome that you can just crank away for 12 hours and it doesn't feel like 12 hours because you're loving what you're doing, but it also doesn't feel like 12 hours because you just rolled out of bed and sat in a chair and then you looked up at the clock and you're like, oh wow, it's been 12 hours, So it's fun. It's there's pros and cons, but it's fun.
Okay,
yeah.
Do you love what you do?
I do love what I do. I do. Yeah. I mean, it's still early stages, and so there's still a long road ahead of me, and there's lots of pressure that I put on myself and all of that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, I mean, traveling around and talking to these amazing people and hearing their amazing stories, I mean, that's really what scratches my itch is people don't know these stories and they need to know these stories, right? And it's just really exciting to me to be able to play a part in that, whether it's small or big, and get people excited about the things that excite me and make me, giddy with joy and wanting to tell 5 of my friends about it. Well, instead of telling 5 of my friends, now I want to tell all of you.
So one of the joys I have being in Portland is meeting people before they even started their thing, their culinary thing, and from startup to then success. And that's why I thought I'd get you on the podcast now, because once you have your own show on the Travel Channel Food Network, you won't even talk to me anymore. So I got to get her now because I know it's
always talk to you
because I know it's the front end, but I really do think you just kind of have that it's going to work. And I'm excited for you.
Good, thank you. Yeah, I mean I'm a big believer that as a marketer who did that for a long time that people connect with people and people connect with stories. They don't connect with products. The product has to be good, right? It does have to be good. But when you're telling someone about a beer, you're telling them for a minute about the beer and the taste profile and what that actual liquid in the glass tastes like. But then you're like waxing poetic about who the owner is and what they did. And, they told me the story in the brewery. You should check out and like, that's the storytelling aspect of it. And I think it's compelling and I think it's exciting. And I just want to get more of that out there.
So Bill Murnahan is the rock star beer buyer here in Portland at Bailey's in the Upper Lip, one of the places I encourage you to go check out.
Great.
I emailed Nick already and said, hey, if Suzanne called, you got to meet with her, got to do their story. And he told me, I asked him, if I show up with an IPA and there's a bazillion in Portland, in Oregon, and what do I need to buy the IPA? And he said, it's got to taste really good. It's got to have an interesting name. Yeah. He said it's got to have a good story. That particular IPA needs a good story, and the person telling me has to be able to tell the story well.
Yeah, that's right.
It's like cause exactly what you said. People love the story.
Yeah.
But yeah, go to Bailey's, go to Upper Lip. There's a lot of good craft beer bars in Portland, but those are two really good ones. One's right above the Upper Lip is kind of a secret speakeasy, above the Bailey's. Yeah, I think it's right up your alley. So, did you hate your corporate job?
I did not. No, actually, that was probably, one of the reasons I was there for 11 years is because I was so happy. I mean, people are great. Job was great. I was good at what I did. That seems to be a pretty good place to be in. So I was in a very fortunate situation where I wasn't running away from something. I was running towards something. And that's nice because it allows you to take your sweet time sometimes, like I did, with getting to that right idea that makes you feel confident to make the jump.
Are you more fulfilled now?
Absolutely. 100%. Yeah. I loved my job, but it wasn't, like I said earlier, it didn't stoke that fire in my belly, and it was a job, and I want a passion and a career and a life that I can build where I can, they can mix and mingle, and it doesn't have to be Monday to Friday that I'm working and Saturday and Sunday or the weekends. It can kind of be based on my schedule and wherever I am and whatever cool person I meet, like that can be work right then and there. It doesn't matter that I'm sitting in a bar. That's fun to me. So yeah.
No, I was sitting in a dive bar in Kauai on Friday and I ended up working, and this guy got two great stories and one I'm going to write up. And I was working, but really I'm working in a dive bar talking to Ryan and George. It was phenomenal.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I don't want people to think this is a rosy picture because there is frustrations. There is hard work. There are long days. That's all true, right?
Absolutely, that's all true. And let's not sugarcoat the elephant in the room. There is savings that you are draining every day that you're doing this, right? I mean, I like the financial piece of it is hard, especially when you've been at a corporate America job for 11 years. That's something that's hard to leave, and so that pressure, and especially living in San Francisco, it's not a cheap place to live. That pressure of, okay, how do I actually make this work and make enough money to really support myself at the very least, and then live an amazing lifestyle on top of it, hopefully. That's the terrifying part, you know. That's the and you have to, and that's why it's so important, I think, to wait until you have that idea. That while it's terrifying, you still feel confident enough to just say, "F it," I'm making the leap.
I'm going for it.
Yeah, it's now or never.
And so far, in spite of the challenges, which are for real, people don't.
Yeah.
I don't want them to misunderstand.
No.
We've both been through heck to get where we are. It's been worth it, though.
Yeah, so far it's totally worth it. Yeah, and I think it will continue to be worth it as long as I stay on it and I keep working hard and really, and as long as I continue to be passionate about it, which I can't imagine ever changing.
No, you just meet. I mean, I know when I meet a brewer I haven't met before that's passionate about the beer making, or a winemaker or a distiller, they just kind of glow from the inside.
Totally.
And I know that's the part that you love.
Yeah, I mean, there was a brewer I visited recently in Connecticut, OEC Brewing, that does some amazing stuff with kind of sour beers. And I mean, I spent 2.5 hours with them and just left. I mean, it's the minute I left, I turned my phone on to myself and I did an Instagram story just because I had to freak out about them to the world for a second. And I wanted to share that with other people, that genuine, oh my gosh, I found this place and it's so amazing. And other people may have heard of it before, but I just I get so excited about that stuff and sharing that with people and hopefully getting them as excited as I am, and then getting them to go make that special trip to visit them next time they're in the area. That's the gold. That's awesome. If I can do that for the rest of my life, I am a happy girl.
So I'm sure they do a good job in Connect with sour beers, but rumor has it the best sour beers in the United States are right here at Cascade.
I know, at Cascade. I've seen some videos on them. I've been paying attention to them. It's true.
You got to go.
Gotta go check that out.
I will never forget. A couple years ago, I was working on my second book. Was tired tired. I needed a break. I was between like 5 interviews in the day, and it was a warm summer day, and I stopped and I had a candied cantaloupe sour that smelled like cantaloupe, and I had a Dungeness crab roll, like a lobster roll, but a Dungeness crab roll, and I was just, okay, this hour is fantastic.
Yeah, that sounds delicious. Yeah, I love sour beers, and that's one of the fun ones currently that we've been busting some myths on. We just did a sour beer series where we're trying to convince people, like, I know you think you hate sour beers, but even within sour beers, they're not all that sour. There's some that are much more mild, and try them and find the sour for you. Sour beers are super fun, and there's a lot of cool stuff going on in the country with that stuff. Right?
All right, and I'll put links for those. Like, where's that? I'll just put a link to your sour beer series so people can listen to that. I'm gonna have going to be linked up this article, but that's fine.
Love it.
Okay, so what role has social media played in your journey so far, for the Crafty Cask journey?
Gosh, I mean, social media is huge for all of us entrepreneurs in particular, I think, but for everyone, whether you like it or not. Like, social media is here, and it's here to stay, and it's amazing because that's how you reach people who are passionate about the same things that you're passionate about, right? And you can reach them in a much more easy way than you could in the past, especially coming from somewhere like Clorox, where it's all about big TV ads. And, even watching them over the past 11 years, where they've really pushed into social media, I learned a ton that way. And then I got to start to figure out how to apply that to my own business. And so, yeah, social's huge. I mean, it would be very hard to build a business like this without social, I think.
Yeah, I think people sometimes underestimate how important it is. And then there's people that I've become fans of, and then they become fans of me, and then they eventually become dear friends. Not all of them, but some people. And when that's all happening, that's just such a wonderful thing.
Yeah, I mean, I had, when I recently did my trip out to New England to do some research, there was a woman that Beauty of the Beer on Instagram, and she really, she knew what she was talking about, and she lived in Connecticut, and she was always posting this cool stuff about beer in Connecticut. And so we messaged a little bit, and I liked her stuff, and she liked my stuff, and then I reached out and I said, hey, I'm coming to Connecticut. Like, where should I go? What should I do? And we ended up meeting for a beer, and I met her in person, and I met her significant other, and and I was like, this is crazy. I met you on social, and now we're like friends in real life. And when she comes to San Francisco, she'll look me up again. So it's pretty cool. It's an amazing thing.
All right. Since it's I beat the drum a lot. I'll have you beat the drum this time. So what makes for a good use of social media? What are the things? Social really takes it takes a lot of time. No, really?
Yeah. Well, it was actually a little surprising to me because when I worked at Clorox, we had whole social media teams, and there were people whose whole job was to manage our Facebook and Instagram page. And at the time, I thought that was a joke, right? Like, look at this silly job, right? Like, really? They're social media managers? And then I started doing it by myself. And I think the first month or two, I really all of a sudden had to pick my head up and be like, oh, man, I can't just do social media 40, 60, 80 hours a week. I have to be doing this other business development stuff if I want to build this business. But that's what I found myself doing, was literally spending almost a full work week just planning social media content, thinking through social media content, finding the pictures, writing the captions, researching the hashtags, right? It's a lot of time, but it's important time.
Yeah, one of the greatest joys I had, kind of like I just didn't even have to say anything, but they knew, like, yeah, really? You just said that to me?
Yeah.
My son Zach is building a sports, Strong Opinion Sports, and he's doing a really good job building it really well. He just turned 21 last Friday, so now when he comes to Portland, we can have a beer.
There you go.
But he said, Dad, you wouldn't believe how much time the social media takes.
You're like, oh, I believe it.
And he looked at me and he goes, oh, I'm so sorry I said that to you.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think, it takes a lot of time, but I think the way you get around that is you have to figure out your game plan, right? And you have to structure
so time. Second thing is a game plan. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I think you have to figure out your strategy and what works best for you. And consistency is huge in social media. So showing up, regularly and often. And so figuring out some scheduling tools, and if you're going to do it one day a month, that you're going to schedule it out for the whole month. What you're going to, so having a game plan is really important. And I think the other things that are really important are really finding what your voice is and really being authentic and true to that. I think it's easy to post stuff to social media. That's the easy part, right? It's harder to get comfortable with who you are and how what you say might rub some people the wrong way, and not everyone might agree with it, but still standing behind but this is what our brand stands for, and this is who we are, and finding that voice and being true to yourself.
Okay, so time, it takes real time.
Takes real time.
Finding a game plan.
Yep.
Finding your voice, or having a good plan, finding your voice.
And then being authentic.
So what do you mean finding your voice?
I think, especially for me, for a long time, especially when you work in corporate too, I think you put on personas sometimes to fit in and to, the corporate culture and all that kind of stuff. And it takes a little time to shed out of that and get comfortable. So an example for me is I swear like a trucker. Like, I just do. You know, I grew up in Massachusetts. Like, I'm a masshole through and through. Like, and like, I had to like sit down and be like, is that okay? And actually I decided like, yeah, I think that's going to kind of be part of my brand, that when you're reading my articles, it's like you're talking to a friend. And if they're so excited about something that they're going to drop an F-bomb, like as they're explaining it to you because they're excited, like that's what we're going to do. And I don't do it excessively, but it is allowing yourself the freedom to be like, who are we and what's okay for us, even though for that brand next door to us that's super successful and super awesome, that's not what they sound like. And I think it's just important to figure that out for yourself. And it takes, especially if you're building a brand that is partially connected to you as a person, that takes a lot of like introspection and self-awareness and maybe therapy and, like all that good stuff. So, yeah.
Every person that debugs me, how do I do what I'm doing? It's like, go listen to this podcast. You're going to learn from Suzanne. It's fantastic stuff. Okay.
Well, thank you.
Since I admire and I love how you tell stories, give us some tips on what makes for a good storyteller.
Yeah, storytellers, we all know a story has a beginning, a middle, and an end, right? That's kind of 101. But I think you have to find the tension point in there. And I think that's a really important part of like, what was the struggle? What was the thing they overcame? Or what was the wacky, weird thing that you would never expect? And so I think that's a big part of storytelling. I also really think it's kind of, what's the word for it? You have to weave the story. You have to tell a story. Like, there's one thing about saying the facts and saying the, in chronological order of like, this is what happened and then that would happen. But you have to find a way to make it compelling and interesting. And there has to be some heart behind it. There has to be that emotional pull. And like I said before, people connect with people, right? And so what makes this personal and what's going to make someone either shed a little tear or laugh their, butt off, or like whatever the case may be. And you have to find that connection, and that's what we're always looking for. And so when, we're looking for craft producers, yeah, we're absolutely looking for amazing quality, and that's a really important piece, and we have our standard of quality, just like everyone does. But beyond that, we're looking for that like unique, interesting, funky little piece of the story that they probably don't put on their website, and they might not put on their website. And that's what we want to help them with. And that's what we want to do, is kind of get that out there and say, you should tell people that. That's awesome. Let us help you tell them that, or we just find it ourselves and want to tell people anyways.
And they don't even realize it.
Yeah,
sometimes.
No, they don't think it's a part of the story. They just think it's like some detail sometimes. And that's okay, because that's not their job. Their job is to make amazing craft alcohol that we can all enjoy and drink, right? And it's my job to go out there and be like, that's interesting. Have you told people that? Let's tell people that.
Yeah, I was doing a meeting with the people from Kololo Rum in Kauai last week, and both people interviewed, where's your story start, your rum story start, your rum journey start. Nikki said some things, and and it just didn't resonate with her, and I wasn't feeling. I'm like, I can't ask her this question, because if there's no good answer, I just can't ask it. And she's, I think I remember where my jumps are. It's stupid. I shouldn't say. No, tell me. And she's, well, when I was little, my dad would soak maraschino cherries in Puerto Rican rum, and I would go steal them and eat them.
Yeah.
And I go, that's where your rum journey started, stealing. She says, when I got caught, I always tell them I was eating fruit.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and people don't think it's interesting. They just think it's some detail of their lives, and like, it's fascinating.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that actually too makes people remember you, right? Like, it's really hard when you go to a new city. We all have 18 friends who've told us about a brewery we should go to or whatever. It's really hard to remember that. But if they told you some funny little fact, or you're like, wait, what was that brewery where the guy did this and the thing did that? And then you go Google that piece, and that's how you find it, right? Like, it's the memorable stuff.
Yep.
Because it's quirky.
So find the tension.
Yep.
Be authentic. Put some heart and soul in it.
Yep.
And look for what's fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and you said don't just say the facts, but weave the story.
Tell the story, weave the story.
Okay, I like that. All right, here's a tough question for some people that I ask them. Not usually not on my culinary podcast, but when I help people live the life they imagine. But like you're like bringing it all together. So, do you have fans?
I do have fans. It's a little weird to say.
It feels awkward, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But you're not arrogant, are you?
No, gosh, no.
No way, no.
Well, especially because I'm like, I need a lot more fans. So no, but I viscerally remember the first time that someone left a comment on one of my Instagram posts that was so like connected to the content of the blog post that I was talking about, that it was very clear to me that they like, oh wow, they read it, and they like fully read it. They read the whole thing, and now this comment is like, that was amazing. Like, because you have the web stats, and that people are clicking on things and but to actually have a human being like take the time to like ask me a question or tell me it was meaningful to them and tell me that like, man, I didn't think I liked IPAs, but now I'm a little curious and I'm going to go dig a little deeper now. Like, that's awesome. Like, it's shocking to me still when it happens. But it's awesome that it's not like just my mom, reading my book. Which, oh, by the way, I don't think my mom even, she's not interested in craft alcohol, though. I'll let her off the hook.
Yeah, at some point in your journey, you get disappointed when the close people aren't even reading anymore. It's like, what the heck? But then you
appreciate that, like, that's okay, though, because I have other people who I've found and who have found me, and we're our little tribe. And, I call my fans Tippler Nation. That's kind of my little term, and I use a hashtag for that. And when I send out my newsletters, it's always like, hey, Tippler Nation. And it's because, we all like to tipple in alcohol, and it doesn't matter if it's rum or whiskey or whatever it is, but we tipple.
And the beautiful thing is you give people permission to enjoy spirits and beer and cider and find the one that works for you.
Yeah, because I think there's a lot of really amazing beer-focused things out there, wine-focused things out there that really go very deep in that niche and do a lot of product reviews and a lot of recipes, or a lot of, like, if you're in the city, go drink there. And that's just not who we are. I think there's a lot of that content out there, and it's being done really well. And we're at a different level. We're not doing product reviews, and we're not, it has to have the standard of quality that fits with us, but we're telling stories. And so that gives us the freedom to expand laterally kind of across all the different alcohol categories, because I love all of them and I don't want to leave any of them behind.
Well, one of the things I appreciate the way you manage your brand is that you put yourself into it. There's lots of things that I'm sure that go on in your day-to life that no one ever even knows about. Same with me. People think, oh, you put your whole life on there. No, actually, I don't. There's stuff you'll never see. But the way I define a fan is someone that likes your thing. They like your take on your thing, and they like you. So if your thing is baseball, and they like your take on baseball, and then they like you got a fan.
Yeah.
I like your thing, all the spirits, all the beer, all the wine, because I like to drink all those things myself. I like your take on it. I like you. Boom. I'm a fan. And then fans help tell your story, just like I'm helping tell your story right now.
Yeah. It's pretty great. I love that take on it. I think that trifecta is a good way to think about it.
All right. So anything else, anything you're most excited about when you're here in Portland? See, what are you going to do? You're going to do some beer.
We're going to do some beer. Definitely going to do some cider. I have lots of distilleries on my list. I have to narrow them down a little further. Actually, there's only so much time in the day. And I think we're going to head up to Wilmette Valley a little bit, check out a little bit of wine as well. So, I'm just really excited to meet people, and so I've reached out to a few people to set up some meetings and stuff so I can make sure I meet the owners where there's, like, really interesting stories and everything. But I'm just excited to check out this really cool town. It's been, a year since I've been here, and we were so busy with that conference, I barely got to really do anything. So I'm excited to have a week before the conference starts this time to really walk around, explore, and meet all these amazing artisans. And I know every time I meet someone at one of these places, they're going to give me a list of 5 other places I should go, which is like, you just feel like you're always behind. Like, you're like, there's so many places. How can I go to all of them? So just means a return trip in my future, I guess.
Well, I'm going to start watching now. When I see the Portland ones come up, I'm going to add those to this podcast so people can check them out. And then we'll start a list of just bombarding you. Next time you come, you got to go here and there. I don't think this is your last visit to Portland.
I do not think so. Okay.
We have a lot of fertile ground here, a lot of good places for you to tell stories
about.
It's
pretty amazing. And even once you start getting outside of Portland to the rest of the state, it's like there's amazing stuff all over too. So it's,
Speaking outside the state, so we're recording this episode at the Pod Bar Food Cart. They sell beer and Zenner sausages. Steve Wooler does a great job. He always has a really good craft beer list on tap. Willamette Week said they're one of the best beer carts here in Portland, recently in an article. Phenomenal beer garden, and it's fun to get to record a podcast here, and we're drinking some Barley Brown's Marzen.
Which is delicious.
Yep, and I don't know if you know what Marzen is, but if you do, great. If not, you can do a whole podcast.
That's right.
Article. You don't do podcasts yet, but don't ever do it. Just stick with your video. So you can do a Marzen video. That'll be awesome. And Barley Brown's from Eastern Washington.
Yeah, cool.
Because we have the whole state. I mean, oh my gosh, craft across the entire state.
Yeah, I feel like you guys kind of invented craft out here, like what it means, not even just in alcohol, just in the general sense. So it's really fun to be here, and I'm excited to have some time to explore.
Yeah, I like it. Okay, well, Suzanne, I'm very excited about what you're doing and celebrating it, and thank you so much for coming on the Portland Culinary Podcast and telling your story. Probably should attempt to say this is the Go Live Life You Imagine episode of the Portland Culinary Podcast, but I have lots and lots of people say, I want to be a food writer, I want to be a writer, I want to do this, I want to do that, and the stuff that you shared with them, I think will really help them, and I wish you all success in the world, and I cannot wait till the day I turn on the TV and there you are.
Yeah,
not just in my Facebook videos, but actually, with your own TV show, and I will not at all be surprised if that comes together.
Well, thank you. I hope you're right, and I really appreciate you having me on this. It's really been fun to catch up, and since we saw each other last year, and get to do this and see how you're doing your stuff.
And one last challenge for you to consider.
Yeah.
I'm ready to read your book too at some point, and it's a lot of work to write a book, but at some point.
You're the master of that area.
You write it. I'll read it and promote it. So.
Awesome.
All right. Cheers, everyone.
Cheers.